All Indiana Politics is your premier source for Indiana politics, focusing on issues that matter to you.
I still want us to be the best in the Midwest.
We can't afford another lockdown.
Give the citizens of this country the relief they need.
Education in the state of Indiana remains priority number one.
In-depth, nonpartisan coverage.
We don't know exactly where the economy will be in January.
People are worried with good reason.
Exclusive interviews with Indiana's political leaders.
We have the resources here in the state of Indiana to care for those who are in need.
Expert analysis on critical legislation.
We need to reform those laws.
This recovery is going to take some time.
We've got to anticipate that there'll be a budget shortfall.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome to another edition of All Indiana Politics. I'm Phil Sanchez. The White House barnstormed the Hoosier State for almost an entire week. First Lady Jill Biden stopped by Westfield High School to talk mental health with students there. Our government reporter Garrett Bergquist was also there.
The First Lady's visit was meant to call attention to federal investments in youth mental health in schools such as this one, but also to call attention to the work that still needs to be done. Elise Menzel is part of Westfield High School's chapter of Robbie's Hope. It's a national nonprofit that focuses on preventing suicide and helping teens who struggle with mental health.
Is that I had my own struggles, my friend had their own struggles, and it felt kind of like a bubble. You felt like you were the only one experiencing it, or you and a couple other people the only one experiencing it. But having this club and seeing all the people that are truly affected by mental health has been able to show me that it's something that just happens to everyone.
Oh, we all have pink on. How great.
Menzel and her fellow club members hosted First Lady Dr. Jill Biden and Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy on Wednesday. They talked about the issues they face as well as their club's efforts to help their peers.
Having the First Lady be able to talk to us and make sure that our voices are known directly to her was really important to all of the club members.
According to the State Health Department, nearly 1 in 5 10th graders in Indiana contemplate suicide. Last year's Bipartisan Safer Communities Act included funding for mental health programs in schools. Westfield Washington schools got $400,000 for outpatient mental health services.
And you are not alone. You shouldn't have to face the rough edges of life of this world by yourself. There are people around you, educators and peers, who want to listen and who are there to support you.
The students say policymakers should consider other strategies as well. They suggest trigger warnings for harmful social media posts and teaching educators how to better communicate with teens who might have trouble explaining what they're going through. What did you most want the First Lady and the Surgeon General to take away from today?
I think just being able to understand that teen voices are important. Often, even though we have this organization, we've done all this stuff, a lot of adults still try to think that we don't have enough ability to do this on our own.
Menzel says she wants to take what she's learned here into her adult life. She's considering working as a genetic counselor or physical therapist. At Westfield High School, I'm Garrett Bergquist for Wish TV, wishtv.com, and like us on Facebook.
And less than 24 hours after that visit, Secretary of Transportation and former South Bend Mayor Pete Buttigieg was in town. He was celebrating investments from the bipartisan infrastructure law. They include funding to convert one-way streets to two-way. Indianapolis also recently got a grant to study whether to turn the inner loop of I-65 and I-70 into a recessed highway. Garrett caught up with him after an event with Mayor Joe Hogsett.
With us now is Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg. Mr. Secretary, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
So I want to talk a little bit about the $2 million grant to study that reconnection project. What has been the experience of other cities that have already pursued some version of that?
Well, what we found is that one size does not fit all, and that's why we're not only funding the construction projects, we're also funding these planning efforts that bring community members together to refine a vision, to get that consensus, which can be hard-won sometimes on where to go next. But certainly standing there, seeing the way that that highway construction really cut up what had been a very interconnected neighborhood, I see why there's such interest and appetite here to do that work, to look toward what a future construction stage could be like. And that's why we wanted to provide the support this early. And those $2 million will go to that planning work and that visioning work that could eventually lead to perhaps a major construction project.
What do cities gain from that sort of project?
Well, I think you get a couple of things. First of all, of course, there's the path toward being able to do the physical work and reconnect together neighborhoods that, in this case, have been divided for more than 50 years. One of the local residents there pointed out to me that the Irish Catholic church that one of his parents had gone to, and the Italian one that his other parents had gone to, and now they are, even though they're less than a mile apart, they're completely divided by 65 and 70. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. But another thing that you get through this process is a stronger community. I've seen how when you go through those steps of forming a common vision, which again is hard because there will be a lot of different views and different opinions, and that's okay. But even going through the process can yield a lot of benefits for the fabric of a community.
A couple of weeks ago, some local civil rights groups raised concerns about the equity of EV charging stations, making sure enough of them go into historically marginalized communities. What is USDOT doing about that? And from what you've seen so far of Indiana's plans, are they addressing those concerns?
Well, this is a real concern that deserves to be taken seriously. Electric vehicles theoretically have the potential to create savings for everybody, including the low-income people who would benefit the most from not having to purchase gas, but only if the EVs are affordable and if chargers are available to everyone. Now, if you live in a single-family home with a garage, charging infrastructure is easy. You can just plug it into the wall. But if you're in a multi-family home, it's not so simple. And so it is very important to make sure that these chargers that are being funded across the country are going out in a way that benefits everyone. We're holding the states to a very high standard, including Indiana, when it comes to that, and also factoring that in direct applications to our department for funding community charging infrastructure.
I want to turn briefly to the one-way streets. You addressed those earlier. What is it that you're looking for in the cities that have successfully managed to get one of these grants, such as what we've got here in Indianapolis?
Well, part of what helped Indianapolis win this very competitive grant was a combination of economic benefits and safety benefits. It's not just about a more pleasant streetscape, although that, I think, is a pretty deserving cause in itself. It's about the fact that when you design the streets better, when you have traffic moving at a safer pace, you are also less likely to see the kinds of crashes that are happening way too often on those 8 streets. And you see a lot of job creation and investment. There's already an extraordinary amount of investment. I mean, having spent a lot of time in Indianapolis a few years ago, I'm really struck coming back by how much growth is happening and how much the private sector is putting in. Often when you make these good public policy choices around how your streets work, the private sector follows with investment. We saw that when I was mayor in South Bend, and I think we will see that here in Indianapolis too.
We're going into a major travel holiday here, and gas prices have pretty much held steady all throughout the summer. How likely is it that gas prices are going to come down? I mean, we just had a hurricane go through the Gulf. They had to shut down a bunch of oil platforms.
Well, one thing about the ups and downs of global petroleum markets is they're often hard to predict, and it's one of the reasons why we're trying to give American drivers and commuters more options, not only doing everything that this administration can to keep gas prices under control, but making it easier and more affordable for people to seek alternatives for how they get around, making sure in addition to how you're used to driving that EVs are more affordable, and the more of those EV jobs, while we're at it, stay here on American soil, like we're seeing around the state of Indiana.
Mr. Secretary, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
Coming up, Jim Banks gets a challenger in the Republican primary for Senate. Why an egg farmer from Seymour says he's the right man for the job.
Every line.
Welcome back. Jim Banks now has a challenger in the Republican primary for Senate. The chair of Rose Acres Farms, John Rust, launched his campaign on August 22nd. He sat down with Garrett Berquist to explain why he thinks Republican voters need an alternative.
Let's bring in Republican Senate candidate John Rust. John, thanks for dropping by.
Good morning.
Why are you running for the Senate?
I got into this race over social issues. I think it's important we bring decency back to America. I'm married to a guy, but that kind of stereotypes me with some people, and I just don't think that a lot of the issues associated with the LGBTQ community correlate to my life experience. I think children's innocence especially should be protected. I don't think we should have pornography in front of kids in schools. I don't think we should have transgender ideology introduced to children. I think they're too young to understand the life-changing consequences of that. And that's why I'm running initially. But then, you know, the economy, it's the inflation, which is tied exactly to the debt ceiling vote, you know, that Jim Banks missed, you know, for $4 trillion.
Since you brought it up, what is your plan for dealing with the national debt?
My plan for dealing with the national debt, first of all, is you cannot have these continuing resolutions or omnibus spending bills. You know, we elect members of Congress to work. I want to go there and specifically address every budget for every department. You know, every year, every line has to be looked at. You know, U.S. senators have incredible budgets for actually accomplishing this. I don't want my campaign office or my Senate office to be a campaign office. I want it to be a working office for people in Indiana.
You bring up what you call transgender ideology, but what about all these people who are in their teens who identify as transgender and feel targeted and under attack by Republicans and conservatives right now?
No one wants to take any rights away from anyone, but the transgender stuff and the hormones, the surgeries, that's something that someone that, you know, is not an adult, they cannot understand the consequences that they're going to have to deal with lifetime for that. And I think that's just something that people are not addressing.
In your campaign launch ad, you mentioned the Biden administration's immigration and border policies. What is your plan for dealing with those two issues?
We have to have comprehensive immigration reform, but only after the wall is built. The wall has to be built first. You know, we've had 5 or 6 million illegal immigrants cross the border in the last 6 years. You know, we have to have immigration, but it has to be regulated, and we don't have that now, and you know, Hoosiers are suffering because of that.
This year we've seen record heat in many cities. We've seen record warm ocean temperatures. We've seen the wildfire smoke from Canada that blew over the state of Indiana, the wildfires in Maui. Southern California had its first tropical storm in 84 years. That's not normal. What's your plan to mitigate the climate crisis?
Well, there was a storm 84 years ago. That's before, you know, there was a lot of industrialization out west. I absolutely believe in climate change. Whether man is causing that, I don't know. I absolutely believe in green energy and you know, wind energy, solar energy where it makes sense. There are things we should always be doing, but we cannot economically disadvantage ourselves with China, who are still building coal plants today.
Jim Banks had about $2.5 million in the bank at last check, and he has the support of just about every major figure in state and national Republican politics, including former President Donald Trump. Does that give you any pause?
No. He's an establishment politician. He's a career politician. I understand that other career politicians have endorsed him. I'm running as an outsider. I am an outsider. I have never ran for political office in my life. I think that's what I bring to the table, you know, is an experience of a farmer, someone who has, you know, worked and accomplished things with, you know, lots of other people in Indiana, you know, building a business that has, you know, helped so many people have an economic food source.
Should there be a national law on abortion?
Yes, I do agree. We have to have a, I support I think it's the 15-week abortion law that Mike Pence is talking about.
Should there be any exceptions to that?
Yes, I believe there has to be exceptions for, you know, the rape, life of the mother, you know, welfare of the mother, and, you know, if there's an anomaly with the child, you know, if there's a problem.
I want to return again for a moment to the transgender issues you brought up. You mentioned, you alluded to gender-affirming care for minors. So are you saying that you would support a national ban on that?
I would, yes.
But what about the physical and psychological damage that could cause? There was a survey that found that only a very small percentage of the people who get those procedures end up regretting them.
I don't think young people can understand the consequences of those actions. That is something I think they should wait until they're adults before they're able to do so.
What makes you the best choice in this race?
I think, one, I'm not a politician. I've never ran for political office, and with what is happening with inflation, we have to have someone that will go to Washington and fight for everyday Hoosiers.
Coming up, Indiana's best political team talks the White House visits and John Rust's run, plus more. Welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome in two members of Indiana's best political team, Republican Whitley Yates and Democrat Ariel Brandy. Good to see you both. Let's begin with those back-to-back visits by the First Lady and Secretary of Transportation. Ariel, we'll start with you right now. Is this an attempt by the Biden administration to win support in states that did not support him in 2020?
I think it's just a great opportunity for us, one, to welcome back a Hoosier, Pete Buttigieg, who is doing a phenomenal job making investments right back here in the state where he's from. To be able to see that happening in key areas like Gary and Indianapolis, I got to see him here in South Bend, and to have someone come back home and to talk about how that's going to create new jobs, provide us with opportunities to allow our cities to grow. I don't think at this point it's about votes. It's about an investment back into our economy and making sure that we have cities that are working for the best of the Hoosier people. And I think we're able to do that. Joe Biden coming here, talking about education, investing in mental health. I mean, top priority right now, especially for young people. Don't think it's a political stunt. I think it's an opportunity for us to see Hoosiers get what they need out of our government, especially on a federal level.
Whitley, when it comes to the politics, though, former President Donald Trump ran in part on infrastructure, but we didn't see the kind of projects that we're seeing now under the Biden administration. Is this going to undercut Republicans' arguments against Biden in 2024?
No, I think that Republicans have some pretty strong arguments against the current administration, whether that be for inflation, whether that be for some of the other issues that we're facing with fentanyl, securing the border, et cetera. But I am excited to see infrastructure being a top project. Although we've had some infrastructure dollars flowing to the state of Indiana, and we haven't necessarily seen those being used on the municipal level as a way, or to be honest, effectively, specifically in areas that are low income and underrepresented minority groups. So I'm hopeful that with whatever is happening in infrastructure, it actually gets down to the places that it needs to be. But when it comes to the Biden administration, I think that they are trying right now to do anything that they can to stay connected with the American people, because there seems to be a little bit of a disconnect of what's important right now.
Ariel, I'll let you respond before I move on.
Yeah, I think the Biden administration is getting it right. They're actually investing in what people actually need right now. Obviously, we knew that inflation was going to be something that was going to come, especially after dealing with the Trump administration. So right now, I'm super excited that, like I said, we have a Hoosier who's come back and invested in Indiana. And to be able to see that in key areas and for the demographics that need it the most, I'm excited about it. Probably not the construction, but I'll deal with that if we're going to be able to see the improvements we need.
Let's turn to that interview that we just heard from with John Rust. Okay, Whitley, how much of a chance do you think he has against Jim Banks?
Yeah, I don't know how much of a chance that he has. I have unfortunately never heard of him before, but it's kind of hard. Jim Banks has a really, really strong support system. I mean, you heard at state dinner that the then chairman, Kyle Hupfer, has basically stated that he can receive money from the RNC, the RLSC, and all these different other agencies. So it kind of seems like a last minute throwing his hat in the ring. Some of the stuff that he said is a little conflicting, and I was a little confused by those things. So it'll be interesting to see how he forms a campaign focused on what he believes Hoosiers want. But I think right now Jim Banks has a clear field to win, to be honest.
Does Rust have a chance, Ariel?
I mean, neither of these candidates are representative of what we stand for as Hoosiers. I mean, all of the things that I heard sound very troubling and also are very dangerous when you think about some of the demographics that he's trying to target in running his campaign. When you talk about the LGBT community and trans youth, we know that that is something that we were focused on last year in our General Assembly, and it's still going to be a topic that comes up today. So running on a platform that majority of Hoosiers aren't agreeing with right now, super dangerous. But honestly, let's give people a chance to be able to make their decision at the ballot box. And if it clears Jim Banks out of the way, great. Don't think that he's the candidate that needs to be running right now that's representative of what we need in the U.S. Senate. So we'll see what ends up happening.
All right, listen, I have a minute left, so I want to get to this quickly. The Indiana Republican Party has a new chair. They have Anne Hathaway now. She's been voted in. Whitley, you're smiling. Your thoughts, quickly.
I mean, if anyone was going to be chair of the Indiana Republican Party to continue the legacy of winning, why wouldn't it be Anne Hathaway, someone who's stood up for Republicans around the country, not just in Indiana, and has also empowered women, not just Republican women, as she's also helped other organizations to stand up and have more women running in political office. I think it's a win-win for the entire state of Indiana, and I am personally happy and excited that she's the new chairman.
Ariel, 15 seconds left. Take us home.
Congratulations to Anne. I hope that she can get the divided Indiana GOP together so that we can actually, see some things happen in the state of Indiana. But I'm excited to see a woman in leadership. Congratulations to her.
All right. Well, good conversation, ladies. Happy Labor Day to both of you, and we'll see you soon. We'll be right back.
Take All Indiana Politics on the go with you. Download our podcast now. Part of the All Indiana Podcast Network and allindianapodcastnetwork.com.
All right, thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics this week. We'll be back here next Sunday morning at 9:30. You can also find our brand new All Indiana Politics podcast. It's part of the All Indiana Podcast Network over at wishtv.com. Have a great rest of your weekend.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Watch All Indiana Politics live Sunday mornings at 9:30 on Wish TV and at wishtv.com. Subscribe to this podcast and listen weekly here on the All Indiana Podcast Network. And be sure to discover even more great podcasts at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.